Hi, I'm Balaji Palanisamy. I'm a principal with AWS Identity Services. I work with AWS customers to support their identity and governance strategy needs.
Hi, my name is Alex Torres. I'm a senior solutions architect here with AWS. I specialize in cloud foundations. I've been with AWS about 3 years, and I'm here to guide you through our presentation and demo today.
Well, welcome to establishing the foundational governance capabilities to support your cloud migration. And today is episode 1 of this 2-part series where we walk you through how to do accounts, access, and audit trails in a centralized manner that supports your ability to govern your cloud migration at scale. We have a short agenda for you today. We will look at why governance is critical to cloud migration. We'll introduce you to cloud foundations and look at some foundational capabilities, and then walk you through how to establish those foundational capabilities through our virtual workshop. Okay, let's get started. Customers like you have many different drivers to start your cloud journey on AWS. You may be looking to provide data-driven insights to your board of directors, may be looking to close a data center, and looking at end of life for your hardware lifecycle. You may be looking to reduce the cost of your IT operations, or looking to adopt next-gen technology like artificial intelligence or machine learning. These are all valid reasons that customers have found to move to AWS. And IDC, a third-party analyst firm, seems to agree with why customers move to AWS. They have found that IT infrastructure teams are, on average, 62% more effective when they move to AWS, and developers are 25% more effective on AWS. So let's see how customers tend to migrate to AWS. AWS suggests this 3-phase approach of assess, mobilize, and migrate and modernize. In the assess phase, we create the case for change. We look at data, at numbers, the requirements for your cloud services, and build a business case that allows your business stakeholders to join your journey on this cloud migration and approve it and support it and always possible. During the mobilize phase, we use the analysis that we did in the assess phase to come up with the requirements for a foundational environment, to identify what our security and compliance requirements are, and to start building the initial environment where your production workloads will go. Among all the other things in the mobilize phase, we'll look at the baseline environment or the foundational environment, and that is what we will go through in our workshop today. Once you have this foundational environment in place, you can move your production workloads and then work on modernizing them as you go forward. So how do you build that foundational environment? We think governance is a critical element of building that foundational environment. Governance is about balance. When you apply too many controls during this cloud migration phase on your foundational environment, you're going to look at not allowing the agility and freedom that developers require to innovate to address your business challenges. Apply too little, and we expose our IT infrastructure to external and internal threats. So this balance is an ongoing element as you make decisions across multiple services. As you migrate your workloads or prepare to migrate your workloads by building that foundational environment, you will make decisions around what security services to use, which AWS services to use, what are my developer tools, what databases are right for us. And then you will also need to look at what AWS partners are the best fit for your organization. For some customers, this can be a lot to deal with. And that's why we introduced Cloud Foundations on AWS. What is Cloud Foundations? It is a guided path that helps you build the environment that your organization needs to move your production workloads onto AWS. And it covers people, process, as well as technology. To help you create that foundational environment that supports and scales your production workloads, Cloud Foundations has a goal to provide everything that you need to deploy, operate, and govern your production workloads. By using Cloud Foundations, we expect that customers like you will be able to build what you need to build, to innovate and address business challenges, and do so in a fast and secure and compliant manner. So let's see what Cloud Foundations actually delivers. So how does Cloud Foundations help you build that foundational environment? We have identified 30 capabilities that you see here. A capability is a set of building blocks that you need to have in your foundational environment. Each capability covers definitions, use cases, and general guidance covering the what and explaining the why of why you need that in your environment. We also plan to provide implementation guidance and automation code for establishing the capability within your environment. We have identified these 30 capabilities that can guide you through the different decisions that you need to make in your environment. You may not need all 30 at the beginning of your journey, and depending on your business and the type of cloud services that you plan to consume, you may need a subset of these capabilities. We have identified core capabilities and published guidance that we will be walking through for the rest of the virtual workshop. And these capabilities are related to the initial set of capabilities that allows any customer to get started with Cloud Foundations. If you'd like to learn more about Cloud Foundations, we will have a link to the white paper and the published guidance towards the end of this session. The governance includes people and process. And it is about establishing the relationship with your cloud services provider, about defining how the different business units and teams in your organizations are going to consume cloud services. It's about building that capabilities across your organization and making sure your organizational standards for IT infrastructure are being met. And with that, I'd like to hand this over to Alex, my colleague, who's going to walk you through the remaining capabilities and a workshop to see how we can build that foundational environment and get you ready to be able to govern at scale.
Thank you, Balaji. So talking about the capabilities that you need to establish your environment, before that, we need to actually think, how do we structure an environment, right? And we actually recommend that when you start on AWS, you think about organizing your AWS environment using multiple accounts. When we mean multiple accounts, we don't really talk about user accounts. These are AWS accounts that allow you to isolate resources from one another. And we'll get into that in a few slides later. But basically, by controlling the access to these accounts and these resources, you're able to build an environment that allows you to support the structure of your workloads and enables you to manage and run the operations in a centralized manner. This lets you build an environment that will scale with your workloads and your cloud presence as you move forward. But when you get thinking about how to organize your environment, it can be a little daunting. So where do you get started, right? And the first place when you start thinking about how to structure and how to organize things is the identity management access control capability, where we will walk you through how to represent and organize the different identities that you need in your environment and the roles that will be placed in each of these AWS accounts that I was mentioning, right? This allows you to, as we were talking about, how to establish a single point of management where you can control the access and authorizations across your cloud environment in AWS. You can set up multi-factor authentication, which is one of our best practices when it comes to security. and you can analyze centrally the permissions that are being used across your environment. And that allows you to implement the least privileged permissions following the least privileged principles. During our workshop, what we're going to do is we're going to go over how to set up IAM Identity Center in your management account, which allows you to manage the roles that are deployed across your environment. In this scenario, what we're going to focus is on the roles that are deployed into the management account with IAM Identity Center. And we're going to delegate the administration of the access across all the rest of the member accounts in your organization to a shared services account in the infrastructure OU. This account will be the IAM Identity Center delegated admin account. And from this account, we will create the user groups and roles that we'll use to access to all the other accounts in your environment. So I keep talking about AWS accounts, right? Let's define what an AWS account is. Each AWS account is different from a user account. Each AWS account is a resource. It's a resource that allows you to group services and AWS resources. It's an isolation boundary. And this isolation boundary is explicit. When it comes to security, you cannot access resources in different accounts unless you explicitly allow so. So by having the different environments and different resources in different accounts, you are adding an additional layer of security to your environment. Additionally, another added benefit is that each account can also act as a container for cost tracking and billing. Each of the services and each of the resources that are being utilized in each of these accounts can be merged into a consolidated billing function in your AWS organization, where you can track which account is spending and control that, set up budgets in your environment. So as your presence grows, as your environment grows, you will have more accounts with time. And that implies that you need to organize them somehow. And that's where organizations can help you with. AWS Organizations offers a construct that is the organizational unit. This is just a virtual construct that allows you to group accounts together, and you can apply controls to them in a group. The idea is that you will be grouping accounts that have a similar function under the same organizational unit, or OU. In this case, you can see on the screen a basic starter organizational structure where you have the foundational OUs, the security and the infrastructure. The security OU is that OU where your security team has their security tooling accounts, where you will store your security logs, and different kind of services and tools that your security team will use. Your infrastructure OU is the same, but for your infrastructure central IT teams, where they will have network operation accounts where our services are shared across your entire infrastructure. Additionally, we're going to be creating a sandbox OU that is detached from your corporate network and your workloads that allows you to innovate. These accounts are assigned to people that need to learn or want to experiment before they start developing production applications. And last, what we're going to be adding to this during the workshop, we're going to be creating a workloads OU. And in this OU, what you will have is your workloads, the applications that you developed. And within it, you can create two different organizational units that will be sitting underneath. You can have a production OU where all your production workloads will sit. And what you'll have is a test OU or a software development lifecycle OU where you can have test environments, QA environments, and other accounts that are not production. And this allows you to segregate and create that isolation that we were talking about between the different accounts. Once we're done with the identity management and access control capability, we're going to start building the log storage capability. Within this capability, we're going to build a secure and resilient central log storage that will allow you to collect logs from the multiple AWS accounts in your environment into one place. This will help you to ensure the integrity of these logs because you can apply controls and protection on this log storage, and you can access these logs and monitor the environment later on. We will ensure that these resources and these logs are protected and they're tamper resistant. The log storage capability is, in a way, a place where you write once and read many times as you need. So we will be protecting this account and the resources within this account very strongly to avoid any kind of security issues. So what we're going to build during our demo is from the management account, we're going to focus on deploying an audit trail. For that, we're going to use AWS CloudTrail, and we're going to deploy an organization CloudTrail. And in our security OU, we're going to create a log archive account that is going to contain an S3 bucket that contains all the audit logs. Within the same account, we're going to create a KMS key. And this follows our security best practice. The KMS key should live within the same account of the resources that you're encrypting. So we're going to use this to encrypt the bucket and the CloudTrail that will be pouring the logs into this bucket. Last, at the end of the workshop, we will be talking about the tagging capability. We will be defining or walk through what it is to define a few tags for your tagging strategy. And we're going to use tag policies to ensure that those tags are applied, and we can measure if the resources within those accounts and those organizational units are actually following the tagging policies that we establish. At a high level, when I mean a tagging strategy, in your organization, you should be thinking about having a tagging dictionary that is available for your builders, for your stakeholders, so everybody is aware of what tags and what resources need to be applied across your environment. You have to have a tagging policy that we will implement through these tag policies at the organization level that allows you to track what resources are being tagged following your tag strategy. And you want to standardize those tags. That can also be done through your tagging policy, or you can create different controls that will monitor the environments proactively, ensuring that there's always a default tag applied to those. In this workshop, we're not going to focus on that aspect, but I just wanted to mention it because it's an important part. Next, we're going to start working on the demo. I'm going to walk you through all of these things, and if you want to follow along, you can scan this QR code, and it will open up the workshop for you. So once you log into your AWS console, you want to go into AWS Organizations. For me, it's here because I recently was working with it. But if you don't see it, you can type the name AWS Organizations and access it here. This will take you to the main screen of AWS Organizations, the service. I went ahead and set it up ahead of time because it takes a little bit of time to set up all the organization, but you might need to enable it and start creating the accounts and the OUs for the workshop. In this case, this is my management account, and I created the infrastructure OU that I was mentioning earlier, the security OU and the workloads OU, and within the security OU, I created my log archive and my security tooling accounts. We're going to be working on setting up different services, and what I was mentioning earlier, we're going to start with Identity Center. Now that we have our organization and we have a few accounts, we can go to the Identity Center console. I am Identity Center. And here, so you can see I'm in the Oregon region. You can pick the region that you want to work on. This doesn't have to be the same region that I'm using, but I am Identity Center. It's a regional service, and it can only be enabled in one region at a time. So once you click enable, if you need to change regions, you would have to delete it in order to continue. So I'm going to go ahead and enable I am Identity Center. And as soon as this is done, we'll get going with the workshop. Okay, perfect. Now that the Identity Center has been set up, we can start configuring access to our environment. And we're going to start by creating a set of groups, right? We recommend that you create groups to manage the different, to access to the different accounts. However, for the management account, we don't recommend to use groups. We recommend that you have the users that will be accessing the management account individually mapped to the management account. So we're going to start by creating a set of groups that will help us manage the rest of the accounts. So we're going to start with the log archive administrators. There will be the administrators that will be setting the things up in the log archive account. We're going to create another group for the security tooling account. Security tooling administrators. We're going to create a group. And we're going to go ahead and create a that's it for this workshop. What we're going to do now is we're going to go set up a user, because it's the user that I'm going to be using. So I'm Alex. I'm going to be using Amazon.com. And we're going to confirm this email address. Again, now that I have this, we're going to be, all these other parameters are optional, so we don't have to have this. We just need an email address. This email address doesn't have to be the same as one of the email addresses that you use to set up an account. This is the user email address. This is the email of the individual that will be accessing the account. So once you have that in place, you click Next. We can add the user to different groups. In this case, I'm going to be administering both of these groups. So I'm going to add my user to both groups. And we're going to add the user. So now I have my user created. This will send an email to my email address, and it will let me get started with IAM Identity Center. I'll show you what that email looks in just a second. In the meantime, before we activate that, we're going to start creating permission sets. Permission sets are like IAM policies, is what we will be using to grant permissions to each of the users or each of the groups across all the accounts in our environment. Permission sets for the management account have to be independent from the permission sets for the rest of the accounts, because when you use a permission set for the management account and you delegate the administration of IAM Identity Center, as we will see in a few steps down the workshop, you will not be able to use the permission sets in the management account anywhere else when you are using the delegated administration function. And that's just a security measure. So we're going to start creating the permission set for my admin users that will be accessing the accounts in the organization, the member accounts that are not the management account. Additionally, we're going to create a second permission set. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to create an administrator access for the management account that is going to be separate than the admin access for the member accounts. And we're going to do management account admin access. Here, NA stands for management account. It's just a way to make it shorter, to not hit the limit of 32 characters when we come to the permission setting. And the same thing, we're going to leave everything by default, and we're going to click Next, and we're going to create this permission set. Now we have these two permission sets, and it's time to assign the permissions and the groups to the different accounts. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and assign a user to my management account independently of the group. And we're going to select a permission set for my management account. It's going to be the management account admin access. So we click on the permission set and we click Next. That way, this user will have access to the management account. We click Submit. This automatically creates the role and the access in the account. So once we're able to access through the IAM Identity Center console, we'll be able to see all the accounts that this user is able to access. Now we're going to also assign user groups to different accounts. So we're going to go onto my security accounts, and we're going to select the log archive and the security tooling, because we're going to be actually we're going to do them independently. For the log archive account, we're going to do the group that we created for the log archive account of the log archive administrators, and we're going to select the admin for member accounts permission set. We click Next and we submit. Once this is done, we will repeat the same, and we will create the same permission set for our security tooling. And we'll select the group for the security tooling administrators, admin for member accounts, and we'll submit this as well. Now we're all set. If we go to our dashboard, on our users, we can see that everything has been created here. Our user, we click on it, you can see that it belongs to 2 groups, and all the details for this user. Additionally, if we go to the AWS accounts, if you were to click on one of the accounts here, you would be able to see what permission sets, what users and groups are assigned to the account, with what permission sets, or what permission sets individually are assigned to the account. Some mentioned earlier, once you register the user, you will get an email that will look something like this, and you have 7 days. So the user that you activate in Identity Center will get an invitation to accept this. So once you click this, it will bring you in, and you need to set up a new password and a new for your user. Let me make sure that we're zooming in here. So I'll just create a temporary password, and we'll be able to access this. Once you have selected a password, you can just set the new password, and this will log you in into the IAM Identity Center console. Well, we actually have to go ahead and log in once the password has been set. In. Here you can see that I have access to 3 different accounts. I have the management account with my management account admin access, my log archive account with the admin access for member accounts, and the security tooling account with the admin for member accounts. Now, this will allow me to access every single account with a different permission set and the different role that I have attached to all of them through IAM Identity Center. So going back to the console, as we are still on the management account, there is a few other things that I want to set up here before we move on. We're going to do a delegated administration of this account, and we're going to delegate that account to the shared services account that I mentioned earlier. However, we don't have that account created, so we're going to create that account, and we're going to delegate. We are going to create that account, and we're going to delegate the administration of IAM Identity Center into that account. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new AWS account. To create an account, you just have to enter a name for the account. In this case, it's going to be Shared Services IAM. And we're going to create an email address for it. There's going to be Shared Services IAM at Amazon.com. And once we have this, we'll create that account on our here. It will take a little bit to create that account. And once it's created, we will be able to move it to our infrastructure OU. Great. So now that our account has been created, we can select it, and we can click on Actions, and we'll move this account to the infrastructure OU. That allows us to have the account where it's supposed to be. And this is fairly fast. We'll see that the account has been created. It's here now. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is delegate the administration of Identity Center. So we have to go back to the Identity Center. We go back to the settings. And if we go down here to the management, we can select the delegated administrator account. In this case, we have to register that account. And for that, we will need the account number, or we can select it from here. We move this account under the infrastructure OU. So we come here, select that account. And once we have it, we can just register that account as our shared services. Now that we have this here, we want to have an admin that can manage this account. So in this case, what we're going to create is a new group. This group is going to be called IAM Identity Center admin, and we're going to add our user automatically to it. And now what we're going to do is going to create a new permission set that will allow us to log into that account. So we're going to create a admin access as well for the account, just to set this up. when you create a permission set in your scenario, you will want to scope down the permissions. So you're just managing the permissions for Identity Center. In this case, you can create a policy that just meets those requirements. For the purpose of the workshop, I'm just creating a user and a policy so we can assign that and we can access the account and see what we deploy. So what we're going to be creating is admin access. Next, and we create this permission set. And now, as we did before, we'll go to the accounts, and we will go into infrastructure. We'll select the shared services, and we'll assign a group. And we will be assigning the Identity Center admin group with the admin access for Identity Center. We submit it. If you go back from Identity Center to your app portal, you can see that now you have the 4 accounts, the shared services IAM, that is the one that we delegated our Identity Center administration, security, tooling, log archive, and our management account. So now that we have access to all of these things, if we go back to organizations, there is one more thing that we want to do as we move forward before we continue. This is the trusted access from the organization to the services across the environment. And what we're going to do is we're going to enable for the next step on our workshop is enable CloudTrail. In this case, it's already enabled. If not, you should come here. This would say disable trusted access. And it would say enable trusted access, and you can just enable it and go ahead. Now that we have this enabled, we are going to go and log into our log archive account. We're going to start by creating that KMS key that I mentioned earlier. So let's go to our Identity Center console. We'll click on our log archive account, and we'll go in the console. This automatically logs you in. Now that we're here, we're going to go to S3, and we're going to create an S3 bucket in this account. No, a KMS key first, excuse me. We're going to go create a KMS key. So we're going to, once you are here in the key management system, key management service system, we're going to go create a key. We're going to create a symmetric key that is able to encrypt and decrypt. If you click in advanced options, in this case, we're going to leave the options by default, but you can have a multi-region key in case you have resources in multiple regions that you're going to be encrypting. Now we're going to click next. We're going to give our key an alias. This is going to be our log storage key. And we're going to click next. And you can select different roles that can administer this key. In this case, we're going to select SSO. That is the role that we created for this account because we want the admin account for this, the admin role for this account to be able to edit this, right? And you can allow the administrators to delete this key. In this case, we're going to leave it on by default. We'll click next. And then we have the key usage permissions. Same thing. We're going to, within this account, we're going to leave that by default because within the account, everybody on this account should be able to use it. And what we're going to do is we're going to do CloudTrail. In this case, CloudTrail that will be added there. And we want to add our management account because our management account will be deploying the CloudTrail across our organization. So we want to make sure that our management account is able to access the key. In this case, our management account ID is this one. So make sure that you select the management account from your organization, and that can be found on the organizations page on the management account once you're logged in within the management account. I'll show you where to get that as we go back to the other account. Additionally, you can find it also on the Identity Center console. Here you have all the accounts numbers. So if you click on your management account, you would be able to copy that number from here as well. And that's the same number that we have here. So we click next, we can revise the policy that we have. This means that we are granting to our log archive account permissions to manage this key. We're allowing our administrator within the account to administer the key. And we are allowing CloudTrail as a service to be able to use this key. We can make this bigger so we can see the entire key. And we're also allowing our management account to be able to attach resources to this key. So if we click finish, now we have that key here. In this case, because the key is on the log archive account and we're going to use it on our management account, we want to click on it and we want to copy the ARN of the key. Keep this safe, paste it on your IDE, and we'll use that on the next step. As we move forward, we want to go first within this STEM account, and we're going to go create an S3 bucket. This is the S3 bucket that is going to receive all the logs from that organization trail. So once you're here, you're going to create a bucket. We're going to call this following our convention name. In this case, we're going to do a AWS Foundations Workshop, the log storage capability. This is our account ID, and this is the region we're creating the bucket on. This convention is to avoid that there is duplication. Each bucket name is unique across all AWS accounts, and we want to make sure that we keep this bucket unique. Additionally, we're setting the ACL disabled. This will make sure that every object that gets uploaded to this bucket, the ownership is transferred automatically to the owner of the bucket. In this case, the log archive account. This will allow us to actually be able to read items on this account across the entire organization when we set up the permissions correctly. We're going to block public access. We'll leave this by default. And if you wanted to have additional resiliency, we will enable backend versioning. In this case, we're going to just leave it disabled by default. And we're going to enable the encryption. In this case, we're not going to use an Amazon S3 managed key. We're going to use the key that we created in the previous step. And we're going to choose from what are our KMS keys. In this case, we have the log storage key that we created. And we're going to make sure that this is the bucket key. This will reduce the cost once the calls are made to encrypt and decrypt the objects in the bucket. We can leave the advanced settings by default, and we create the bucket. Now, the next step to make sure that our bucket is protected is to configure a bucket policy. A bucket policy is another layer of permissions that will allow us to ensure that nobody can write or read from this bucket if it is not allowed. It's another control that we can establish to protect this resource. So we will click Edit, and we will paste a policy. In this case, you can find a sample of this policy on the workshop that we share on the slides. And I'll walk you through the different statements within this policy. In this case, we're allowing CloudTrail and Config, that are the two services that will be delivering events and logs and audit trails to this account. We're only configuring CloudTrail during this workshop, but you can set up config to deliver all the logs to the same bucket. In this case, we're allowing CloudTrail and config to get the bucket ACL, and only from the resource that we're specifying. And if you remember, this is the name of our bucket. And if you compare this name to what we did here, it's the same. Additionally, we're allowing CloudTrail and config to put objects in our bucket, and we're allowing them to do so in these two. This is our organization ID, and this is our account management account ID. And we are allowing them to give the bucket owner full control of the objects. Additionally, we are ensuring encryption. We're not allowing any object that is not encrypted to be put in this bucket. So we are enforcing description through this bucket policy. Now that we have this here, we can just scroll down, save changes, and there is an error that occurred. This is a problem when you copy and paste. There cannot be any spaces at the very beginning of the policy, so make sure that if you copy and paste from another file, that you remove that. You scroll down now and you click Save Changes. After clicking on Save, your bucket policy is applied to the bucket, and now we can move to create that CloudTrail, organizational CloudTrail that we were talking about. Before you go ahead, make sure that you copy your bucket name so we can actually use it on the next step, because we're not going to be creating a new bucket. So once you have copied the bucket ARN, we'll head out to our management account and create that CloudTrail. So we go back to our IAM Identity Center portal, we go into our management account, and we go into the console. Here, we'll go to CloudTrail, and we'll create a new trail. Once we're creating this new trail, you will want to give it an event. We're going to do a foundations organization trail. And we're going to enable this trail for all the accounts in the organization. We're going to use an already existing bucket. And in this case, we're just going to copy the bucket name. Since the bucket names are unique, we don't need to put anything in front or after them. And we'll do enable encryption with our existing key. And here what we'll do is we'll use the ARN from our key that we saved from earlier. This is also in the US West 2, where it's the same region that we created the bucket. And one of the prerequisites is the KMS key has to be in the same region as the bucket. So as we go in, we'll do next. We'll record the management events, the read and write API activities. We'll click next. This is the summary. Once you are ready, this is the review and create. So you will review all the details of your trail. So you can make sure that the key is here, that the log file validation is enabled, the location of the logs that are going to be stored for this trail. And you can just scroll down and click Create Trail. These fail to create because it looks like the KMS key policy does not have sufficient CloudTrail permissions. So let's go back to that account and see what happened. We'll go back to the log archive account. We'll have to recreate the trail again, but that's okay. So we go back to the key management system, to the KMS service, and we go to our log storage key. We can see what happened to our policy. So if we click here, the error message said that CloudTrail didn't have sufficient permissions. What that probably means is that CloudTrail didn't have access to encrypt, decrypt, re-encrypt, and generate the key. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the actual service CloudTrail instead of the service link role for CloudTrail. So we're going to add that service here. And we need to add a comma. And this is looking for a principal. So instead of doing this, what we're going to do is we're going to replicate that. And we're going to add another statement that is going to be just the service. So basically, we would copy all of this. We would paste it underneath. Cloud key, like we're going to change the SID for CloudTrail. And instead of having this principal, what we're going to have is a service. And it's going to be yes. Now that the service CloudTrail can use the key, we should be able to create that CloudTrail. So we save these changes. And we go back to our management console. Since we hadn't closed this, we can click reload. And we are back here, retracing the steps. We need to create the trail again. So it's going to be foundations, organization, trail. We will enable it to all the account. We'll use an existing S3 bucket. We'll go back and copy the name of our bucket and paste it here. We'll use an existing KMS key. We'll paste the ARN of the key. And we'll move forward. We'll leave all the other settings by default, management events, read, write. We click next. This is the review and create page. We make sure that everything is okay. This cloud trail location seems not correct, so we'll go back, edit it. So the bucket name is correct. Now we go back in here, click next and next. Now this looks good. The KMS skill looks good. And if we click on create trail, now our trail has been created and it's logging all the events in our organization. Now, the next step is to make sure that all of these things are being logged. So we'll check that on the next step, because since we're saving all the API events that happen to that central location, it might take some time to propagate. So the next thing that we're going to dive into is service control policies, right? We want to, as I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we're able to protect this account, the log archive account, and we want to protect other things in our organization. And service control policies are the best way of doing this. They are preventive controls that allow you to limit the actions that can be executed. So in order to manage those, we have to go into our management account, and we're going to go into the organizations console. Within the organizations console, on the left panel, we'll see here that says policies. And there is different types of policies. We have AI service opt-out policies, backup policies, service control policies, and tag policies. During this workshop, we're going to focus on these two, service control policies and tag policies. And since we're going to start with the service control policies, let's go ahead and enable them. So you click, you enable the service control policies, and now we're going to start working with them. Okay, now we have them created. The way that service control policies is they do not apply to the management account, and they do not apply to service roles. Additionally, you need to have a service control policy attached with full AWS access, because if there's no service control policy allowing access, by default, because of security reasons, AWS doesn't grant any access whatsoever. So a full AWS access policy will always be attached to any account or any OU within your organization, and any other SCPs that you use should be to limit any other actions that you want to perform in that account or that OU. So in order to protect our account, what we're going to do is we're going to create a service control policy that prevents the modification of the log archive resources. So we're going to create that account. This here, we're going to call that prevent modification of log archive resources. In this case, I already have a policy ready. So I'll walk you through this. We're going to edit this. We're going to paste it here. And basically what we're doing is that if the admin access is not part of this, we won't be able to modify this policy. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to modify that role wildcard to match our role here. So we want to make sure that admin access role, it is in there. In identity, in IAM Identity Center, this is the role that gets deployed to all the accounts through IAM Identity Center. So if we come here and we check the name of the permission set that we created, we will be able to get that role exactly. So basically, the admin for member accounts is the role that would be allowed to modify that. So if we go back to the organizations page, to our SCP. We edit that role here. We will edit that role here, and we will edit, and everything is at denied, right? So we don't want anybody to be able to change our bucket policy or change the lifecycle configuration unless they're admins of the accounts. In this case here, what we're also doing is the organizational trail. We want to make sure that it is protected. So what we will be doing is to add that trail that we created here. So we need to get that ARN from the trail. So if we go to Cloud Trail, and we pick our foundations trail, we can copy the ARN of this trail. From here. And we'll bring it down to the organization again. In this case, what we're going to be doing is just modifying the end of it. So we'll get this trail, foundations trail, and we make sure that for any trail in any account in any region with this name, we don't allow anybody in our organization to edit it. And now we can go ahead and create that policy. Now that we have this policy here, what we can do is we can attach this policy to our account. So in this case, what we will do is we'll come to the accounts. We'll go to our security OU. We'll click on our log archive account, and we will apply an SCP here. So when you go into the account details and you click in policies, you can attach a new SCP. As you can see here, as I was mentioning earlier, you have all the inherited policies that grant that full AWS access. However, because of the way that service control policies work, the only permissions that are actually inherited are the denies. SCPs do not grant permissions. So if this policy was to be detached, all the actions would be denied within this account. So that's why it's important that you always have a full AWS access SCP attached to your accounts or your OUs, regardless of inheriting, because only the deny actions are the ones that are inherited. So let's go ahead and attach that SCP that we just created. We'll prevent modification of log archive resources, and we attach that policy. And now we can see it here. Only these roles would be able to edit that. If we had another users or other roles within our accounts, they wouldn't be able to modify anything in this account. So the next thing that I wanted to navigate through is the other type of policies that we were talking about, tag policies. And we're going to go ahead and enable them. Tag policies allow you to create standardization across your organization and all the accounts in your organization to follow the same rules. And you can control and you can evaluate what resources are being tagged and whatnot. So in this case, we're going to create a foundation tag policy that is going to include a few values. So in this case, what we're going to create is we're going to use the visual editor to just make it easier for the sake of the workshop, but you could create a JSON file and you can just paste it if you have it here. So in this case, our first tag key is going to be our cost center. And we want to make sure that we use capitalization. If it doesn't, for example, if we didn't care, we don't have to mark this check. But in our case, we want to make sure that that's that way because it's how we expect it to go. So we can add also specify values for this tag key. So in this case, if it is not one of these tag values, the resources that have this tag key wouldn't be compliant with the policy as well. So in this case, let's say that we only have 3 cost centers, and they're going to be our security cost center, that is security 345, our financial department, 123, and our COE team 876. Now we save these changes, and we can add a different tag key. In this case, we're going to add something for the environment type, right? Environment stage. We want to make sure that the capitalization is there, and we want to create the specific values. In this case, it's going to be prod, pre-prod, and so this way we can identify what resources and what environment they belong to. And the last time we can add the different projects. Project name. In this case, we don't want to, we'll enable the capitalization, but we don't have to specify any value because every team can have a different project name. That way you can just list that and you can have an idea of all the resources within the same project. Now we create this policy and we can review it. If you click in here, this is the JSON file that would be generated. So you can generate any policy you want as code, and you can store it and update it and apply it here as well. You don't have to use the visual editor. Now that we have this policy, you attach it in a very similar way as we did with the service control policy, but in this case, we want to apply this as a foundational tag policy to our entire organization. So we're going to go on the root OU, and we're going to go on policies, and we're going to go to tag policies. In this case, we don't have anything applied here, so we're going to attach that tag policy to our entire organization. This will make sure that all the resources in our organization will be subject to that tag policy. So if we go back here, you see that now that foundation tag policy is directly attached to our root OU, and that means that it will be inherited by all the OUs underneath. In this case, another type of tags that are very important across your environment are cost allocation tags. However, they take about 24 hours to be enabled. So I'm going to go ahead Cost Explorer, and we're going to go ahead and enable those right now. And since this is the first visit, this might take up to 24 hours. So since this is only episode 1 of our workshop, and we're going to be talking about controls in our second workshop, we'll walk through how enable these cost allocation tags so you can use them across your environment once this feature is ready. And as I mentioned earlier, the last thing that I wanted to walk through is to see how the logs from our trail are being stored centrally here, right? So if we go back to our log archive account and we go to our S3 bucket, in our foundation workshop log storage, we'll have our AWS logs. And within this folder, we'll have our management account logs and our organization logs. And here we can see all the accounts that are in our organization. And when you click in here, you have all the CloudTrail logs that have been collected across the organization as well for each of the accounts. You can edit your bucket policy to add roles that would be able to only read these logs and create dashboards on other accounts, and your security team can evaluate and audit your environment as well. These logs, as I mentioned during the presentation, are a read as many times as you need write only ones, and that's why we protected them. These are the source of truth of everything that is happening in your environment, and they can be used as historic values of what's happening. So you want to make sure that these logs are not tampered because they serve as the source of truth of everything that has been happening, and it will be the audit trail for anything that you have in your environment. And that was all for the demo. Let's get back to the slides, and we'll wrap up and we'll do a little summary of everything we've covered today. And here we're back at the slides. In case you wanted the QR code for the workshop, here is again. The workshop is available online, so you can access it and go through it. You can use it as a guide, or you can use it as a reference. It has some of the policies examples that we use, so you can edit them and use them for your own environment as well. So as a recap, as a summary, we went through why cloud governance is important in your environment and how it can help you scale and achieve your goals on your cloud environment on AWS. We talk through what Cloud Foundations on AWS is and how you can use the different capabilities within the framework and the initiative to help you guide the journey and model everything that you need to have in an environment. Additionally, we cover the governance capability and how to organize your environment using multiple accounts. We started with the identity management and access control capability, setting up access to your environment and delegating the administration of the service to the shared services account that will be in the infrastructure OU. And we went through the log storage capability, setting up an audit trail that will help you monitor and control everything that is going on in your environment. Additionally, we also talk about tagging and how to set up tag policies and a few SCPs to protect that log storage. So what's next? This was our first episode of the webinar where we talk about identity, accounts, and setting up your organization. And we are going to have a second episode. We're going to walk through guardrails and centralized management of security tools, where we're going to set up centralized management for all of these different security services in your AWS environment and your organization. This will happen on August 25th at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. Additionally, before you go into this second episode of our webinar, we have our multi-account strategy white paper that guides you through all the best practices on how to set up a multi-account environment. And additionally, our Cloud Foundations on AWS white paper that walks you through the mental model and the capabilities and offers a more in-depth description of everything that you need to set up in your environment. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the webinar. And we're looking forward to have you in our second episode. Thank you.